Welcome back, Consumer Law 101 individual consumer viewers, for our seventh video in our basic video series entitled, What are the other secret credit reports every consumer should know about? Again, I'm your course instructor, attorney Aaron Swift, the CEO and managing partner of Swift Law North. Just like always, we start with our agenda. First, is there other credit reports? You know there are because we talked about them briefly, but we're going to learn about what those other main ones are. And then lastly, we're going to figure out, are your rights any different with these other reports and consumer best practices? So there are other credit reports. Well, per the CFPB, that's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, there are at least 62 different credit reporting agencies in the United States. So far, we basically talked about the big three, and I briefly mentioned maybe one or two others like LexisNexis. And again, the big three are Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. But think about that. Other than the big three, there's 59 other credit reporting agencies in the United States. And on the slide, I put a link towards a list of what those 62 are that the CFPB puts out. And then each CRA has numerous reports that it generates. Some of them, like the biggest CRAs of the big three, have hundreds. So you can think about how many different credit reports that each of us really has. And just do the math. We're talking about hundreds of different types of reports and 62 different companies. We could be talking about hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of different credit reports about us. There are main categories, though, that we can talk about. The national consumer CRAs, mainly the big three. There are employment screening companies that deal in credit reports about job histories and background checks for jobs. There are tenant screening or rental screening reports. Talked about them briefly before, but those are credit reports specifically to your rental history, and a lot of landlords and property management companies pull those. There are check and banking account screening reports. When you go to open up a new bank account at any of the biggest financial institutions like Chase, for example, they're going to run a background check on you that has to do with your history in the banking industry. And that can involve, have you ever bounced checks? Have you ever used overdraft protection? There are credit reports about all of that. There's property, driving, and medical insurance screening. Property insurance makes sense. These are credit reports about whether or not you've made a lot of claims in the past. Um, Driving, of course, background check reports make sense. Insurance agencies want to know how risky of a driver you are. And then some of the scariest ones are medical insurance screening for insurance companies and the medical space, which is kind of scary when you think about there are credit reports about you and us and most consumers just about your medical history. Then there are other reports that have to do with utilities, retail, gaming that become less and less used and utilized, but nonetheless are credit reports that are out there. All right. So what are the main other ones? Again, this is not an exhaustive list, but I do want to just highlight some of the main important ones. So employment, background, credit reporting agencies, there's your Accurate Report, ADP Select, Assurant, backgroundchecks.com. I'm not going to go through all of these, but just want to highlight main ones. Tenant screenings, AmRent, Rent Bureau, RealPage, RentGrow. Again, these are common credit reporting agencies in the rental screening space. Checking and bank account, you have Certegy, Check Systems, Early Warning Systems. Insurance screening, Verisk. LexisNexis is one of the biggest credit reporting agencies. They deal in a lot of spaces, insurance, include reports, Innovis, and then even subprime lending space like Clarity, SageStream, Teletrack. These are different types of reports that are main, but they're nonetheless other because they're not the big three. But it's still so important for consumers to know about these because you may not know when you go to apply for a job that there's wrong information in your job history. You may not know if you go to apply for an apartment lease and you're rejected, that the rejection reason was because there's a false eviction in your credit report. I mean, all of these things are in your credit history, part of your credit file that make these credit reports for just about every big decision in life, certainly any financial decision, whether it's applying for a loan, a job, insurance, security clearances. There are reasons and types of reports for a whole host of issues, well far and beyond just the big three. So are your rights any different? And let's talk about consumer best practices. So generally speaking, no, your rights are not any different with these other types of reports than they are with the big three. The Fair Credit Reporting Act governs all types of credit reporting agencies and consumer reports. So we're going to learn more about standards later, but the standard under the Fair Credit Reporting Act is that these companies are supposed to follow reasonable procedures to assure the maximum possible accuracy of the information in your credit reports. So, I mean, that's a high standard, and this standard is applied to all these other types of reports, background check reports for driving history, job screening, rental history, just like the big three. Those have to be accurate, complete, and consistent as well. So keep regularly monitoring these other reports as well. I listed a few of them. I gave you a link to the 62 listed by the CFPB. You have the right to get a free credit report from all of them, just like you do the big three. And if you're about to be in the space of, applying for a job, you might want to check those reports ahead of time. Or if you know you're going to be applying for an apartment, go to those main rental screening, companies via their websites and get copies of your free reports so you can check them. And if and when you do find errors, again, reach out. If you've been denied a job, you've been denied an apartment recently, who knows? It could be because of grave errors. And if so, you could be entitled to thousands of dollars. If you'd like some more information, educational content, remember this is the basic video series. We have an advanced and a pro series. It's actually that three-tier structure on both sides. We have a consumer law 101 for consumer individuals instructional video course, and then one for business professionals. But they're all broken up, both of them, into basic courses, advanced courses, and pro courses. Then lastly, if you think that you may be entitled to damages or have someone to sue because of errors on your credit report or one of these other reports, reach out to us at www.swiftlawnorth.com. Thanks.